Welcome in, everyone, to yet another boxing video here at SBR Picks and Sportsbook Review. I'm Jeff Nadeau, a.k.a. the big man on campus, here hosting the video. Taking a look today at some fights over the weekend, including Terrence Crawford and Jeff Horn. We'll go over a couple others as well. Here with returning guest from the Corner Podcast, contributor to The Root, Ring TV, Yahoo. And you see him generally talking about MMA. We do some boxing once in a while, too. Andreas Hale, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. Looking forward to a nice round of boxing here on this weekend. Obviously, you and I have talked before about some of the big-time fights coming up. Are these big-time names? Some of them, some of which we remember, Jeff Horn, obviously, with the Manny Pacquiao fight. But three fights that should be pretty good. Maybe not the main event, but we'll talk about them and more here. How's everything been going? What have you noticed lately going on in boxing? What are you looking forward to, Andres, before we get into the fights? Are you looking forward to this card?
I'm looking forward to seeing Terrence Crawford perform. I'll tell you that much. I'm always entertained by him. And we'll talk about a little bit deeper why I'm looking forward to this fight. He's become one of my favorite fighters to watch. So the Santa Cruz fight this weekend is also entertaining to me. I'm looking forward to that. And obviously seeing Charlo. Whenever a Charlo fights, it's become appointment viewing to see what these guys do. So boxing is, it's starting to see a few matchups. Hopefully over on the Golden Boy side, they figure it out with Triple G and Canelo so we can get that fight this September. But other than that, it's been a pretty good year for boxing thus far.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think we all kind of thought, when Floyd went away, what would happen? Obviously, you have a lot of good fighters now. We're looking forward to the card. And let's get into it here. You mentioned Charlo, him and his brother, the twins, Jermell and Jermal. Jermell fighting this weekend against Austin, no doubt, Trout. As we know, Charlo has not lost. Going for the light middleweight title here. Thing about Austin Trout, though, is you see this all the time. These fighters that have been in the game a long time, you really have tasted a little bit of stardom, kind of, you fought, 35, 40 different times. They have the experience. You look at Trout. He's fought some great fighters, over the years. Lara and Cotto and obviously Canelo Alvarez. You wonder, though, bit past his prime. This is obviously a big, a big kind of finish towards the end of his career. This is a big up-and-coming fighter, and as we know with Charlo, he's really made that career trajectory kind of moving up. Look, I thought, you look at what both these guys have done, you would agree. Trout a bit over the hill, you could say. I was really impressed with what we saw from Charlo against Erickson Lubin, but you look at the line here. You're going to have to lay 1-12. There's not a ton of value in this fight. I'm going to ask you, Andres, are we over the hill with Austin, no doubt, Trout? He's had a nice career, but it's going to be difficult here for him.
Yeah, no, we're at that point in his career. He showed us what he had, against Miguel Cotto and Canelo Alvarez. But since then, he's become that guy. I hate to liken him to this person, but if anybody remembers William Joppy back in the day, and William Joppy ended up going against a lot of the elite talent, but he was like that litmus test. He was that guy that you were putting there with. If you can get past him, then it seems like, okay, he's legit. Trout's in a similar situation. Does he have a chance to win? Of course. He's a very good fighter, but his best years are behind him. I'm not going to say he's damaged goods, but he's a worthy test, but he's gatekeeper status now. And Charlo's a guy who, like you said, his trajectory has just gone up. He's found himself. He's found his power. Both him and his brother have both found their way to sit down their punches. Interesting enough, different trainers, but they figured this thing out. As far as betting value, don't see much there. I think this should be an exceptional showcase for Charlo. But yeah, Trout, he's at that point. We've seen what he has to offer. There's nothing new that's coming from him. And this is pretty much it. He's on the downside of his career.
Yeah, I have to ask you. You find it's interesting. Trout actually faced Charlo's brother about 2 years ago, and it was a pretty good fight for Trout. He actually went the distance. It was a tough finish for Jermal Charlo. But look, that's 2 years ago. Obviously, 2 years in boxing is that's not the greatest. Again, what are your thoughts on that? Could there be a possibility maybe this is kind of a pesky fight for Charlo? His brother had some trouble.
Yeah, but it was 2 years ago. And if anything, you talk to your brother and you talk about tendencies, you watch Trout fight, you have these things figured out. I think, it's really up to him to adjust. But I think the thing about Jermell that's interesting, same with Jermal, is the way that they've committed themselves to finishing fights early. They don't let things linger anymore. And that's what they've gotten better at. And you look at the Lubin fight. Lubin was a guy that, yeah, he was in over his head, but nobody expected him to get flatlined, as early as he did. I don't think that, these guys aren't getting paid overtime. So it's like, let's make quick work if we can. Trout is tough, though. Trout, he's going to be there. So pesky is the right word. He might be a nuisance early on in the fight, but I fully expect Jamel to figure him out, take care of business in the mid to late round.
Yeah, and again, at 1-12, I mean, there's not a ton of value here. I think the end is near for Austin, no doubt. Trout. Let's move over to the featherweights. Another big-time fight over the weekend. All Saturday fights. Abner Mares taking on Leo Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz, actually, if you remember, this is a rematch. These two fought a few years ago. I think it was back in 2015, if I'm correct. So a good amount of time ago, about 3 years ago. Obviously, Santa Cruz won. Leo Santa Cruz, one of the great young featherweight fighters out there, one of the great names, really. I mean, he's really made a name over the last couple of years. But I have to say, I look at this fight from a distance and say to myself, I think 1-7 is a bit too high. I mean, I think he'll win, surely. I don't know if it's going to be as easy as maybe the other fights we're talking about here tonight. Mara is a tough, solid fighter. And we know, if you know anything about Santa Cruz, I mean, he's a guy that wants to kind of dictate pace, overwhelm you. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that with Mares. This is one of the better fighters Santa Cruz. Actually, this is the best fighter Cruz will face so far. He's fought him before. We obviously know once you fight someone, you kind of understand their tendencies like you discussed. But I think there might be some value maybe on Santa Cruz by decision at 160, minus 160. I don't know if this will be a knockout. I just don't know that I see it. I think this is a tough fight. I think we'll get a majority decision here, but I don't know if it's going to be easy. What are your thoughts on Mares Santa Cruz?
Well, the interesting thing is, yes, Santa Cruz, since the last Mares fight, he fought Carl Frampton twice, and both of those were in majority decisions. He won one and he lost one, won the most recent one. He's been a little bit more active, but his style doesn't lend itself to a very long career. He's a guy whose best defense is his offense. He throws a lot of punches and he tends to stay busy, puts people on the long end of his jab at times, but he tends to smother himself and fight in close quarters. Against Mares, if you remember the first fight, Mares came out like a storm in the early rounds, slowed down later, so conditioning was an issue. He allowed Santa Cruz to get back into the fight, and Santa Cruz ultimately dominated the later round. Well, I wouldn't say dominated. Exciting fight through and through, but he took the later rounds. He won by a wide margin on 2 scorecards, and it was a draw on the other. Do I see the same thing happen here? Probably. I think Mares is going to pace himself a little bit better. I don't think he's going to spend himself early like he did. I think he knows Santa Cruz is here in the long haul. But the question is, when does Santa Cruz's style catch up with him? I don't think he should be this big of a favorite against Mares. I think you have a legitimate shot with the underdog here. I fully expect Santa Cruz should win, but this isn't, a one-sided fight. Mares, only fighting, I think, 2 times since the Santa Cruz fight. He's pacing himself, and he hasn't taken a lot of damage. His showings haven't been tremendously impressive, but I think he's going to step up for this fight. This is a California fight between 2 California guys in front of a California crowd that remembers what they did last time. I think you're in for an exciting fight. If you're a betting man and you want some value, I would like to take Mares here, as the underdog. It just depends on where the line is now. I think I saw Mares as like plus 310 at one point. Has that moved up?
You can get 4-1 at certain places, so he's getting a bit more value even at 4-1.
You can make a worse bet elsewhere. You could definitely make a worse bet elsewhere. I would take a shot if you have extra money to spend, just to see if you can get the payout here. Because again, Santa Cruz could slow down at any moment. Yes, he's only 29, but he's been through so many wars and so many violent fights that it could very well catch up to him. And Mares is extra motivated and knows what he has to offer. So you can take a shot there. Otherwise, the decision for Santa Cruz might be the way to go. I don't see a finish happening here. I just don't see that happening. These are 2 very durable guys. Mares has been knocked out by Johnny Gonzalez, but that was, a flash knockout in the first round. Don't see it happening here. Think we're just going to be in for a very exciting fight.
What about the draw? Would you consider it?
I would consider it. We were close last time, and when you have 2 guys that are just going to kind of go balls to the wall for each round, and you're splitting hairs with some of these judges, yeah, a draw is very possible. You look at the recent fight with Badu Jack and Adonis Stevenson, and you look at these rounds that you don't know which way they're going to go. A draw is not that far-fetched. It could happen. So if you find some value there, play a shot on the draw.
I mean, I could see it now, the trilogy of these 2 here. Listen, 22-1, not a bad price there on a draw. I mean, if it's going to happen, I've said it on a video time and time again, Andreas, from the various videos I do. Most amateur bettors mistake the word value a lot. They replace it. They try to justify bets by saying they have value. I think it's a word thrown around, but I think in this case, I do understand your point of view. I don't see a lot of difference between these two. I think they go toe to toe. I think it's a good fight, a lot of action. I'm leaning towards definitely throwing something on the draw for sure. But again, I'm not crazy about laying a 1-7 price. If I'm going to lay a price with Santa Cruz, it's the 160 on the decision, because he might be slightly better than Abner Mars. But look, if you want a great fight, this should be it this weekend. The big one, obviously, a lot of people are excited about this one. I'll be interested to hear your opinion here. Terrence Crawford taking on Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn 18-0-1, obviously off that controversial win against an aging Manny Pacquiao. And I think it's important to mention, we have to remember, Manny Pacquiao is at the end of his career. Jeff Horn got a poor, terrible decision in a fight that he didn't win. If you know anything about boxing, you know he didn't win. So technically, he lost to Manny Pacquiao at the end of his career. Now you're telling me that I'm going to give him a shot against quite possibly the best fighter in the world in Terrence Crawford. Crawford 32-0, 23 knockouts. This is for that welterweight title in the WBO. I will say this about Horn, and I think all of us can maintain the opinion that before the Pacquiao fight, we hadn't seen much of Jeff Horn. He's an Australian fighter, kind of has been down under. Definitely a rugged, awkward style, if you will. Really just kind of tough to kind of gauge. And I do think, for the first couple rounds, I think it'll take Crawford some time to kind of understand some of the awkward movements, because he truly does, Jeff Horn, fight very awkwardly. But I think once he kind of gets going, I think Horn's really just kind of, buying his time. He's like that kid at the end of a high school career where you're just buying the time until you graduate. You don't got much to do. You're kind of taking in all the graduation gifts and all the applause, but it's sooner or later you're going to have to face reality that you got to go and do something with your life. I think Jeff Horn's at the end here. He's been able to eat this up for about a year, but now you got to go and get dealt with. Terrence Crawford's not Manny Pacquiao. Listen, I would go Crawford by knockout here. I don't think there's any other way to slice it. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree with you. Terrence Crawford is one of those guys who doesn't fight to defend titles. He fights to hurt people.
Sure.
He's got a really nasty streak too, and Jeff Horn's camp has been talking a lot of trash lately to incense Terrence Crawford. I talked to Terrence Crawford this week, and when I talked to him, he doesn't say a lot, but when he says something, it's very deliberate. He said if he comes at me, he might get hurt. And he kind of let that linger for a minute. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, he's going to try to punish this guy. And you look at his last few fights. Yeah, he got Julius Ndongo out of there pretty quickly, but I think that was the plan the entire time. But I think somebody like Jeff Horn, he wants to punish. He's on ESPN Plus, which is their new streaming service. He's headlining the card. He knows at 147 right now, there's a ton of names on the other side over at with Al Heyman that he probably isn't going to get to fight anytime soon, but he wants to make a point. And I think torturing and knocking out Jeff Horn in the mid to late rounds there's a lot of value for that here, because that's how Terrence Crawford fights. Jeff Horn's going to be physical. He's going to try to bull his way in. He's going to try to headbutt, use his elbows, whatever he can do. But Terrence Crawford's just too good. He's ambidextrous. He switches stances, becomes a completely different fighter, and he's violent. He has a violent side. So, yeah, you're right. Horn doesn't have much time here. He's got to try to figure things out. He said he's going to try to knock out Crawford early, and people laughed. But I think he probably is going to do that, because the longer the fight goes, the worse it's going to get. So, yeah, I don't see this happening any other way. I don't think Jeff Horn survives to the final bell. I think either his corner throws in the tower, or he's just knocked out and just quits somewhere in the 7th or 8th round.
I mean, if you remember in that Pacquiao fight, I think it was the 9th or 10th round. I think Horn's trainer considered throwing in the towel. If you remember back to that fight, he was towards the end. I still think it's one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in a boxing match, but that's for another video. I think the best play on the board in these three fights is definitely Crawford by KO, TKO, or DQ, 188. I'm not a huge fan of laying almost 1-2, but listen, in a fight like this, I think it's just something you have to do. Let me ask you, Andreas, out of all these fights, which one are you most confident in? I think they're all pretty solid. Yeah,
but I'm kind of Crawford by stoppage. I just don't see it any other way. A guy and again, he's making his debut at 147 on top of that for a world title. He's not here to mess around. He's not here to play games. He's here to make a statement. And Jeff Horn is that guy, when also talking to Terrence Crawford, the first thing he says is, I'm not Manny Pacquiao. I'm not past my prime. I'm here. and I'm going to hurt somebody. So it's when you hear those kind of words, and Crawford, I don't think he's a guy to BS. So I think he's going to make a play to hurt Jeff Horn, and that's your safest bet. He's going to finish this guy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Should be a great trifecta fights. Quickly before we end, Andreas, Tyson Fury fighting this weekend against a no-namer. He's laying minus 10,000. Any reason to be concerned here for Tyson Fury? If you looked into this fight, what is your overall view on him? I mean, heavyweight division, obviously with Wilder and all these big time guys. What's the future look like in that division?
Well, if he's got his head on straight, he's trouble for everybody. You know, his physical attributes, he's tall, he's rangy. He fights a style that's not aesthetically pleasing, but it's a puzzle for everybody to figure out. Everybody looks at the Klitschko fight. But other opponents, he's knocked out. You know, they can't figure him out. They can't get in close, and they get hurt. No reason that you should think his opponent has any chance here. I mean, for God's sakes, if anybody looked at the weigh-in today, he picked him up like he was a child. Tyson Fury weighed like 275 today. He's a giant. He's going to murder this guy. He's a problem for the rest of the division. As long as he's got his head on straight, he's a talent. You may not like the way he acts sometimes, but he's a puzzle, and people can't figure him out. So he's the guy, you know, if Wilder and Joshua can't face each other anytime soon, you know, Tyson Fury steps in, he can realistically beat either of them. And he makes those fights very interesting.
I don't think this is a terrible bet. I would consider, maybe trying a little first round knockout action here with Tyson Fury. I mean, listen, plus 750, maybe even go into round 2 plus 650. I mean, hypothetically, does this, seriously, how quick is this going to be? I would think he'd want to do some kind of showstopper here. I mean, Tyson Fury around the world, first round knockout, that's going to get a lot of play.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if anybody's seen some tape on the guy that he's fighting, him sparring, I mean, this is a terribly one-sided mismatch. I think one punch is going to end it at a certain point. Just when does Tyson Fury feel like throwing that punch, the first or the second round? There's no way this thing lasts more than 4 rounds. And if it does, Tyson Fury doesn't need to box anymore. So he should get this finish here. Yeah, you know what? I'd say, you know, throw a few dollars on both rounds 1 and 2. You're going to get some value there either way. I just don't think it lingers any longer than that. There's no reason for it to. Fury's going to get the job done and be impressive.
It's funny you mentioned Safari, the guy he's fighting. He's actually Albanian. I'm actually Albanian myself, and I know I got a brother that fights Nuri Safari. They're from Switzerland, but they're Albanian by descent. And it's going to get ugly, I think. I mean, whenever you see someone like this, you got to respect it, but I think this is strictly a payday, kind of. We say in Philly, Andreas, like you go down and get the cashier at ShopRite to fight. I mean, Danny Garcia does that a lot, actually. He goes and just fights these nobodies. But this should be a quick one. I'd maybe take a shot with the prop bet, maybe first, second round knockout, something like that could get a nice little payday. You got to look for value in these kind of fights. But as always, Andreas, great stuff. We'll look forward to chatting with you down the road. Why don't you give a nice plug to where we can find you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can find my work at for boxing, Ring Magazine, Boxing Scene, and Yahoo Sports. Same with MMA. Do that there. And of course, over at SBR, every week I'm talking about my picks in boxing and MMA. So, and then if you into entertainment, Billboard Magazine and a few other music outlets. So I'm a pretty busy guy. But when it comes to these sports, you can find me and follow me on Twitter at Andreas Hale. I'm always talking about this stuff.
Great stuff as always, Andreas. We'll talk to you real soon. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks.
This has been SBR Sports Picks. As always, give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, and comment on who you like this weekend. We'll see you next time here on SBR Sports Picks.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.